I gave a stiff nod, momentarily relieved, but also somehow more uneasy to the bone. Without evidence. Were we going to eventually convince ourselves none of it had happened somewhere? Something clicked like a shutter. Would that be better or worse? We finished loading the car in under 20 minutes, a process that had taken us over an hour to complete when we arrived. I slammed the trunk shut and did a quick scan of the campsite to make sure we had not left anything behind. The fire ring with its cold ashes. The picnic table where we'd eaten that metallic-tasting dinner. The flattened grass where our tent had stood, the air tasted faintly of metal. It all gazed so ordinary now, ready for the next unsuspecting campers. I slid into the driver's seat while Cassie buckled herself into the front seat side. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. I turned the key and woke the engine, put the car in reverse, and inched backward of the clearing. The narrow dirt path seemed even tighter on the way out, twigs and limbs scratching against the sides of our SUV as we navigated the twists. When we finally reached the main forest road, I pressed the gas harder than necessary. The tires spun briefly on the loose gravel before catching. And then we were moving away from campsite 17, from the meadow, from whatever had found us there. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Neither of us gazed back. The forest thinned as we drove, eventually giving way to more open country somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. I kept hunting the rearview, watching the wall of trees recede behind us. The light hummed as if listening. Each mile we put between ourselves and that place felt like a tiny victory, a tiny step back toward safety and sanity. Cassie kept her eyes pinned ahead through the windshield, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wanted to reach out to her to offer some comfort, but my own thoughts were too jumbled, too raw. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Looks like we might hit some traffic near Warren, I murmured after we'd been driving for about 20 minutes. My voice sounded strange in the silence of the car, too loud and too normal. Cassie glanced at me, then back at the road. Yeah, she murmured. Sunday drivers. And so it began. A thin, brittle small talk about nothing. Road conditions, gas prices, the weather forecast for Pittsburgh. The light hummed as if listening. Anything to paper over the silence. Anything to pretend we weren't both thinking about ink-black figures moving in perfect unison across a meadow washed in moon milk, or those impossible photographs taken from inside our tent. I noticed Cassie checking her side mirror frequently, her eyes darting to it every few minutes as if expecting to see something following us. I was doing the same thing with the rearview, though I tried to be less obvious about it. As we left the more remote areas and joined larger highways, signs of ordinary life began to appear around us: gas stations, fast food restaurants, other cars filled with regular people going about their Sunday business. The familiar landmarks of civilization gradually eased the tight knot of fear in my ribcage, though it never fully disappeared. We stopped for gas at a crowded station just off I-80 about halfway back to Pittsburgh. The place bustled with road-weary travelers, families returning from weekend trips, truckers taking breaks, teenagers hanging out by the convenience store entrance, regular people, safe people. I filled the tank while Cassie went inside to use the restroom and buy some drinks somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. When she returned, she handed me a bottle of water without meeting my eyes. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Thanks, I murmured, taking it from her. You okay? She didn't answer right away. She leaned against the car, looking at the ground, her shoulders tense. Cassie. Her face collapsed. Suddenly, tears spilling from her eyes. She clapped a hand over her mouth with one hand, trying to muffle the sobs that shook her body. Hey, I murmured softly, stepping Closer to her somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. "Hey, it's okay. We're safe now." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I've never been so scared," she breathed between sobs. The air tasted faintly of metal. I couldn't when I glimpsed those photos somewhere." Something clicked like a shutter. I folded her into my arms, pulling her against my ribcage as she cried. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Her body trembled. All the fear and tension of the past 24 hours finally breaking through her composure. "I know," I murmured into her hair. "I know." She clung to me, her fingers digging into my back. The air tasted faintly of metal. "What were they?" She breathed, her voice muffled against my shirt. "Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter." "What the hell were those things?" I had no answer for her. No explanation that made sense. No words that could erase what we'd seen or what had happened out there. "I don't know," I admitted. "But they're back there, and we're here. We're going home." Cassie pulled back slightly, wiping at her tears with the heel of her hand. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face blotchy from crying. "I keep thinking about how it was in our tent," she murmured, her voice catching somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. "Right there with us, taking shots while we sat there like, don't," I murmured more sharply than I intended. "Don't think about it. It's over." But we both knew it wasn't that simple. The memory would stay with us, lurking in the background of our thoughts, waiting to emerge in quiet moments or ink-black nights. Cassie took a deep, shuddering breath and straightened her shoulders. "We should go," she murmured, glancing around the busy gas station as if suddenly self-conscious about her breakdown. I gave a stiff nod and opened the front seat door for her. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. She climbed in without another word, immediately reaching for her seat belt and clicking it into place. A small, normal action that seemed to ground her. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. I walked around to the driver's side, checking our surroundings one more time before getting in. The gas station was bright and ordinary in the bleached midday light. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Cars came and went. People chatted and laughed. Everything was normal. And yet, as I turned the key and woke the engine and pulled back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that our ordeal wasn't truly over. Something had changed in that forest. Something fundamental between Cassie and me, between us and the world we thought we understood. The highway stretched ahead, leading us back to Pittsburgh, back to our home and our regular lives. The light hummed as if listening. But the rear view still called to me, drawing my eyes back to check what might be following us from the shadows of the Allegheny National Forest. The miles of highway unwound before us. As we headed back toward Pittsburgh somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. Sunlight glinted off the hood of our SUV, a bright, almost cheerful counterpoint to the heavy silence inside the car. We'd been on the road for about 30 minutes since the gas station, and we did not had spoken a word. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the center console, hoping Cassie might reach for it. She didn't. She sat with her body turned toward the front seat window. Her arms crossed tightly over her ribcage, watching the landscape roll by without seeming to see it. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. The breakdown at the gas station seemed to have emptied something vital from her, leaving a hollowness in its wake. "Should we stop for lunch soon?" I breathed. Mostly to break the silence. Cassie shrugged without turning toward me. "Not hungry." Her voice sounded flat, emptied of emotion. I tried again. "We could grab something quick. There's that place near Clarion you like with the good coffee." I murmured, "I'm not hungry, James. The edge in her voice was new, sharp, and defensive. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and focused on the road ahead. A green highway sign indicated 62 miles to Clarion, still 2 hours from home at least. We should talk about what happened, I murmured finally. Cassie let out a laugh with no warmth somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. What's there to talk about? We glimpsed some weird shadows and scared ourselves half to death running back to camp. I glanced at her, caught off guard by this sudden rewrite of the night. That's not what happened, and you know it, do I? She turned to face me now, her eyes red-rimmed and challenging. Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who would not let go of the idea something was wrong from the moment we arrived. The forest was too quiet. The food tasted metallic. There were figures in the trees. You seeded that into my skull. Are you serious right now? My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. The air tasted faintly of metal. I didn't plant anything. That place was wrong from the start. It was a normal campsite until you started seeing things in every shadow. I wasn't seeing things. You glimpsed them too in the meadow through your camera. You glimpsed the photos on your camera that you didn't take. She flinched at the mention of the photos, her defiance momentarily cracking before she rebuilt it. The air tasted faintly of metal. The meadow was ink black. I probably just glimpsed other campers or rangers, and the photos a cold draft seemed to move with us. I might have accidentally hit the shutter at weird times, accidentally from inside our tent from multiple angles while we were sitting there. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Cassie, you were terrified. You were crying at that gas station less than an hour ago. I was tired and stressed, she snapped. And you kept feeding into it instead of being rational. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. I felt a flush of anger rise up my neck. So, I'm the irrational one now. You're the one pretending nothing happened when we both know that's not true. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. What exactly do we know, James? She made air quotes with her fingers. That we got spooked in the ink black. That your constant paranoia about the forest being too quiet made us jumpy and imagine things. We didn't imagine anything. I tried to keep my tone level. Something was in that tent with us. Something followed us from the meadow. Stop it. Cassie's voice cracked slightly. Just stop. I don't want to talk about this anymore. You started this and now I'm ending it. She turned back toward the window. Just drive. I want to get home. I bit back another retort and focused on the road, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles going bone pale. The light hummed as if listening. Traffic increased as we approached a more populated area, giving me something to concentrate on besides Cassie's unfair accusations. The light hummed as if listening. For nearly 40 minutes, we rode in silence. A cold draft seemed to move with us. I turned on the radio just to paper over the void, but even the cheerful voices of the midday DJs couldn't penetrate the wall that had formed between us. Cassie stared out her window the entire time, her posture screaming that she wanted to be anywhere but here with me. As we passed through Clarion without stopping, I felt my own anger hardening into something colder and hardening with frost. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. If she wanted to pretend nothing happened, fine, but she didn't get to put this on me for what we both experienced. Why did you pick that campsite anyway? I breathed, cutting through the static. Cassie's head snapped toward me. What? Campsite 17. Why that one? There were plenty of others closer. To the main road, closer to other people. The air tasted faintly of metal. I told you already. I wanted privacy. A real wilderness experience. Well, we certainly got that, didn't we? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Her eyes narrowed. What exactly are you implying, James? I'm not implying anything. I'm just wondering why you were so set on that specific spot, the loneliest one. Miles from anyone else. Oh, so now it's my fault. I planned all of it. Organized everything, did all the research to give us a nice weekend away. And now you're saying I purposely put us in danger. A cold draft seemed to move with us. That's not what I murmured. It's exactly what you murmured. God, this is so typical. She threw up her hands. I try to do something nice, put in all the work, and you find a way to turn it around and put this on me when things don't go perfectly. Things did not go perfectly, Cassie. My voice rose again, and I forced myself to take a deep breath. The air tasted faintly of metal. Look, I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to understand why we were so isolated. Because that's what camping is supposed to be. Getting away from people, from noise, from the city. The air tasted faintly of metal. That's the whole point. There's a difference between away from people, and so far into nowhere that no one could hear us scream. Cassie went quiet at that, her anger seemingly deflated by my words. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I didn't know that would happen. How could I have known? The vulnerability in her tone made me regret pushing so hard. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. You couldn't have. I'm sorry. She didn't acknowledge my apology. Instead, she reached for her phone and pulled up her music app, putting in her earbuds with deliberate movements that made it clear our conversation was over. I turned my attention back to the highway, watching the mile markers tick by one after another. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. The closer we got to Pittsburgh, the more normal the world around us seemed to become. Regular Sunday traffic, families in minivans, trucks hauling weekend toys back home, the ordinary rhythm of life that had felt so distant just hours ago. But even as the familiar skyline of Pittsburgh appeared on the horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were bringing something back with us. Something invisible but present. Clinging to us like the scent of smoke from a campfire. The last 20 minutes of our drive passed in complete silence, with Cassie lost in whatever music was playing through her earbuds and me lost in thoughts I couldn't quite organize. The air tasted faintly of metal. By the time I turned onto our street in the shady side neighborhood, the afternoon was fading toward evening. The air tasted faintly of metal. The light taking on that golden quality that usually made our tree-lined street look picturesque. Today, the long shadows between houses just reminded me of the ink-black spaces between trees. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. The light hummed as if listening. Neither of us moved immediately. Cassie removed her earbuds and stared at our modest two-story home as if seeing it for the first time. Home sweet home, I murmured, attempting a lightness I didn't feel. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. Cassie nodded and got out of the car without responding. I followed her to the trunk and popped it open, revealing our hastily packed gear. Jumbled together in chaotic piles, a cold draft seemed to move with us. In any other circumstance, Cassie would have immediately started organizing. Sorting everything into proper categories for cleaning and storage. Instead, she grabbed whatever was closest to her, a sleeping bag in her backpack, and headed for the garage without a word. The light hummed as if listening. I loaded my arms with as much as I could carry and followed her. We worked in silence, making trip after trip until the car was empty. The gear sat in messy heaps on the garage floor. A physical representation of the disorder that had taken over our lives in the past 24 hours somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. Cassie stood. Looking at it all, her face unreadable. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Should we start cleaning it? I breathed. Knowing the answer, but feeling compelled to offer. Not now, she shook her head. I'm going to take a shower. She walked past me into the home. Without another word or backward glance, leaving me alone with the jumbled remains of our weekend. I caught the sound of the back door close, then her footsteps moving through the kitchen and up the stairs. The light hummed as if listening. A few moments later, the water pipes groaned as the shower started. I stayed in the garage, staring at our camping equipment. The tent bag with poles sticking out at odd angles. The cooking gear still dirty from our last meal. The sleeping bags collapsed rather than rolled properly. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Everything about it gazed wrong, stripped bare. Somehow the silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Not just disorganized, but fundamentally changed from what it had been before. Would we ever use any of this again? Could we look at a tent without remembering that thing standing in the doorway watching us? A cold draft seemed to move with us. Could we ever lie in sleeping bags without feeling exposed and vulnerable? I doubted it. I picked up Cassie's camera bag, which she'd left among the gear, and set it on a shelf. The light hummed as if listening. Whatever had happened in those woods, whatever had taken those photos, the evidence was gone now, deleted by Cassie's shaking fingers at the gas station. Part of me was glad. I never wanted to see those images again. But another part wondered if we'd erased the only proof that we weren't losing our minds. The air tasted faintly of metal. The shower was still running upstairs. Cassie usually took quick, efficient showers, but I didn't blame her for wanting to wash away every trace of the forest. I moved into the home, leaving the mess in the garage for another day. The light hummed as if listening. Our living room gazed exactly as we'd left it on Friday afternoon. Throw pillows arranged neatly on the couch, books stacked on the coffee table, Cassie's reading glasses beside her favorite armchair, everything in its place, untouched and ordinary. The familiar sight ought to have soothed, but instead it felt slightly off, as if I were looking at a perfect replica of our home rather than the real thing. I sank onto the couch and stared at the blank TV screen, too tired to reach for the remote, too wired to close my eyes. The pipes rattled again as the shower turned off upstairs. A few minutes later, Cassie appeared in the doorway wearing her bathrobe, her wet hair wrapped in a towel. The light hummed as if listening. I'm going to bed, she announced, her voice flat. The light hummed as if listening. I glanced at the clock on the mantel. It wasn't even 7 yet. Don't you want to eat something first? Not hungry. Cassie, you haven't eaten all day. You need what I need? She cut me off. Is to go to sleep and forget this weekend ever happened. I stood up, taking a step toward her. We can't just pretend it didn't happen. Watch me. Her eyes met mine, challenging and defensive all at once. I'm going to sleep. And when I wake up tomorrow, we're not going to talk about this ever. It's over. Cassie, I mean it, James. I can't. I just can't. Something in her expression cracked, revealing the fear she'd been trying to mask with anger. Please. The plea in her voice stopped whatever argument I'd been about to make. A cold draft seemed to move with us. I gave a stiff nod slowly. Okay, get some rest. Relief flashed across her face before she turned away. Good dead of night. Good dead of night. I echoed, though it wasn't dead of night yet. Just the end of a day I wished had never happened. I listened to her footsteps. Ascending the stairs again, followed by the soft click of our bedroom door closing. Alone in the living room, I felt the weight of it all we'd experienced pressing down on me. The light hummed as if listening. Cassie might want to forget, to push it all away and never speak of it again. A cold draft seemed to move with us. But I knew that wasn't possible. Some things, once seen, can't be unseen. Some experiences change you forever. Whatever had found us in that forest, whatever had stood in our tent doorway and moved around us unseen, had came home with us. In ways we did not was ready to admit. I woke with a start, my hand automatically reaching across the bed for Cassie. The sheets on her side were cold. Sitting up, I glimpsed the bathroom door open, the light off. Her closet door stood ajar. Her work outfit from yesterday gone from where she'd laid them out. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. She had left without waking me. The clock on my nightstand read 05 a.m. Cassie's alarm usually went off at, but she must have silenced it to avoid disturbing me or to avoid talking to me. The fight we'd had in the car still hung between us, unresolved and heavy. I rubbed my face and swung my legs over the side of the bed. Every muscle acted like I'd run a marathon. The light hummed as if listening. The physical toll of fear, I guess. My mind flashed unwanted images. Ink black figures moving in unison across a meadow washed in moon milk. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Our tent zipper slowly opening. The camera screen showing photos taken while we huddled in terror. I pushed the thoughts away and headed to the shower, twisting the tap as hot as I could stand it. Under the spray, I tried to make sense of Cassie's behavior. She wanted to pretend nothing had happened, to erase the entire experience. Maybe that was her way of coping. But how could either of us just forget? After showering, I checked my phone. No messages from Cassie, no good morning text, no reminder about dinner plans or grocery stops on the way home. Just silence, extending our wordless evening. From yesterday the silence felt practiced, rehearsed. I dressed for work and moved through our hushed home. Each normal action feeling slightly wrong, like wearing someone else's clothes. In the kitchen, I found a half-empty coffee carafe still warm. Cassie had made her usual amount, enough for both of us. The light hummed as if listening. A small olive branch perhaps. I poured myself a cup and leaned against the counter, looking around our kitchen. Everything was in its place. The copper pots hanging above the island, the knife block next to the cutting board, the fruit bowl with slightly overripe bananas we'd meant to eat over the weekend. Normal, ordinary. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was eyes on me. The air tasted faintly of metal. I turned quickly, half expecting to see something in the corner of the room. Nothing was there, just morning sunlight streaming through the windows. My commute to the office was a blur of autopilot, the same route I'd driven hundreds of times before. The downtown traffic moved at its familiar crawl. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Talk radio hosts discussed the Steelers' prospects. Pedestrians hurried along sidewalks clutching coffee cups. Somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. The routine of it ought to have soothed. At work, I stared at my computer screen trying to focus on the client reports I needed to review. The light hummed as if listening. The words swam before my eyes. I read the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing a single word. Birth to James, a voice murmured, startling me. I gazed up to see Marco, my office neighbor, leaning against my doorframe. The light hummed as if listening. Sorry, what? I breathed, blinking away the forest memories that had been creeping back into my thoughts. I breathed. If you had the Henderson file twice. Marco raised his eyebrows. Rough weekend. Yeah, you could say that. I turned to my filing cabinet, grateful for the distraction. Camping trip didn't go as planned. Rain get you? Something like that. I pulled out the Henderson folder and handed it to him. You look like hell, man. Maybe take a sick day. Marco's concern sounded real. I forced a smile. Just need some coffee. I'll be fine. After he left, I tried again to concentrate on work. The morning dragged into afternoon. I answered emails automatically, joined a client call where I murmured all the right things. Without really being present, and picked at a sandwich from the deli downstairs that tasted like cardboard and dust. A cold draft seemed to move with us. During a break, I checked my phone again. Still nothing from Cassie. I texted her, "How's your day going?" Simple, non-confrontational. A gentle knock on the wall she built between us. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. I put my phone away, hurt but not surprised. Bye. I had accomplished maybe an hour's worth of actual work somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. My boss stopped by, breathed about the weekend, and I muttered something about bad weather and stomach bugs. The light hummed as if listening. He seemed satisfied with the explanation for my distraction and reminded me about the client meeting on Wednesday. A cold draft seemed to move with us. I gave a stiff nod, promised to be prepared, and wondered how I would ever focus on something as meaningless as quarterly projections when everything had changed. The light hummed as if listening. The world gazed the same, but it wasn't. Not anymore. The drive home took longer than usual. Thanks to roadwork on 5th Avenue. I sat in traffic, my mind wandering back to the forest, the unnatural silence, the laughter surrounding our tent, the thing standing in our doorway, watching us. What had they been? Not human, at least not entirely. The proportions were wrong, the movements too synchronized. The light hummed as if listening. And how had they gotten into our tent to take those photos without us noticing? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. The light hummed as if listening. When I finally pulled into our driveway, Cassie's car was already there. I had not expected her home this early. She usually worked late on Mondays to get ahead on her week. I paused before going inside, taking a deep breath. A cold draft seemed to move with us. We needed to actually speak, really talk, about what had happened. Cassie's strategy of denial wouldn't work. Not for something like this. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The home was quiet except for a soft tapping sound coming from the kitchen. Cassie's laptop keyboard. "Hey," I called out, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. The air tasted faintly of metal. "I'm home." No answer. The tapping had stopped. I walked through the living room and found Cassie sitting at our kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. A cold draft seemed to move with us. She didn't look up when I entered. Her face was bloodless, her hands resting on either side of her computer, trembling slightly. The light hummed as if listening. "Cassie." I moved closer, concern replacing my earlier hurt. The air tasted faintly of metal. "What's wrong?" She finally gazed up at me, her eyes wide with fear. The light hummed as if listening. "James," she breathed. "I found something." The expression on her face dropped my stomach into my shoes. I pulled out the chair next to her and sat down, our shoulders almost touching. The light hummed as if listening. "What is it?" I breathed. Though part of me already knew, could read it in the terror etched across her features. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was our cloud gallery open to an album labeled Home 2023. I was organizing our photos, she murmured. Her voice barely audible. I needed something normal to do, something that made sense somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. I was going to sort the shots from our trip to Maine last summer. The light hummed as if listening. I gave a stiff nod, waiting for her to continue. I noticed this album. I didn't remember creating it. Her finger hovered over the mouse pad, shaking visibly, so I opened it. A cold draft seemed to move with us. She clicked on the first image. Cold spilled through me. It was us in our bedroom sleeping. The photo was taken from the corner of the room near the closet, looking down at our bed somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. The timestamp showed 3 months ago. I didn't take this, Cassie breathed. Did you? I shook my head, unable to speak as she clicked to the next photo. Us again. This time eating dinner at our kitchen table. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. The angle was from behind me, focusing on Cassie's face as she laughed. At something I must have murmured. The food on our plates told me it was from about 2 months ago. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. The pasta dish we'd made for our anniversary. Cassie kept clicking. Photo after photo appeared on the screen. Us watching TV on the couch. Me in the shower visible through the frosted glass. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Cassie reading in her favorite chair by the window. Me standing at the kitchen counter making coffee taken from just a few feet away somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. There are scores of them, she murmured, her voice cracking. Going back months, I felt sick, stripped bare in a way I couldn't articulate. Something had been in our home, moving around us, watching us, photographing our most private moments. The light hummed as if listening. The camp photos, I managed to say, the ones in the tent. Cassie nodded, her face ash pale. I think whatever was in the forest has been here in our home all along. She clicked to another folder labeled Simply Sleep. Inside were hundreds of images, all taken in our bedroom while we slept. Different nights, different positions. Sometimes the camera was positioned right next to the bed, capturing our faces in unsettling close-up. Oh my God! I breathed, pushing back from the table. The room felt suddenly short of air, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. Cassie closed the laptop with a snap as if she couldn't bear to see anymore. She gazed at me. Her earlier anger and denial completely gone, replaced by raw fear. James, she murmured. The camping trip wasn't where it started. It was just where they decided to let us know they were watching. The truth struck like a physical blow. The camping trip had not been a random encounter with something strange. In the woods somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. It had been deliberate, targeted. Whatever these things were. They had been observing us for months, learning our routines, our relationship, our most intimate moments. The air tasted faintly of metal. And they were still here, still watching. I scanned the kitchen, looking for signs of intrusion, a moved object, an open window, anything. Everything gazed normal, which somehow made it worse. How had they entered our home so many times without leaving a trace? The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. We need to call the police, I murmured, reaching for my phone. Cassie let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. A cold draft seemed to move with us. And tell them. What? That some things have been secretly photographing us for months. That they stalked us in the forest. They'll think we're crazy. She was right. With nothing to hold in our hands and Cassie had deleted the forest photos. A cold draft seemed to move with us. We had nothing but our word and our story. Sounded insane, even to my own ears somewhere, something clicked like a shutter. Then we need to leave, I murmured. Go to a motel or something. Cassie shook her head. They found us in the middle of nowhere, James. They've been watching us for months without us noticing. The light hummed as if listening. Do you really think a motel room would stop them? The hopelessness in her voice matched the growing dread in my ribcage somewhere. Something clicked like a shutter. She was right again. If these things could enter our locked home undetected, take photos, and leave without a trace, they could find us anywhere. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. What do we do? I breathed, hating how small I sounded. Cassie gazed around our kitchen at the familiar space that now felt alien and threatening. I don't know, she breathed. I really don't know. I sat back down next to her and took her hand. It was ice cold. For a long moment, we just sat there, two people whose sense of safety had been utterly shattered, trying to process the impossible. The light hummed as if listening. The cloud storage account was still open on Cassie's laptop. The air tasted faintly of metal. All those images of our private lives captured by unseen watchers. The violation felt physical, like hands on my skin. Why? Cassie finally breathed. Why would they do this? Why us? I had no answers, only questions breeding questions. That multiplied with each passing minute. How long had they been watching before they started taking photos? What did they want? Were they in the home right now, invisible somehow, listening to our conversation? A cold draft seemed to move with us. The last thought made me glance up at the ceiling, half expecting to see something looking back at me. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Nothing was there, just our kitchen light fixture. The same one that had hung there since we moved in. But now I wondered, had it always gazed exactly like that, or had it been slightly moved, adjusted to hide something? I couldn't remember for sure, and the uncertainty itself was another violation. A cold draft seemed to move with us. Cassie followed my gaze, understanding immediately what I was thinking. The air tasted faintly of metal. They could be anywhere, she murmured softly. They could be here right now. A chill ran down my spine at her words. The home suddenly felt too big, too full of hiding places. Closets, under beds, behind shower curtains, in attic spaces, between walls. We can't stay here, I murmured, standing up. Not tonight. Not until we apparition out what to do. Cassie nodded slowly. She closed her laptop and clutched it to her ribcage as if uneasy to the bone to let it out of her sight. The light hummed as if listening. My sister's place, she suggested. Yes, let's throw some things in a bag and go. We moved through the home together, we did not wanting to be alone in any room. I grabbed clothes from our dresser while Cassie watched the doorway. She collected toiletries from the bathroom while I stood guard. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. The ordinary act of packing an overnight bag felt surreal, as if we were playing it normally while something monstrous lurked just out of sight. In the car, Cassie clutched her laptop on her lap, her knuckles white. I inched backward of our driveway, looking at our home through new eyes. It was no longer a sanctuary, but a place of hidden dangers, of unseen watchers. As we drove away, I checked the rear view repeatedly, searching for signs of pursuit. The air tasted faintly of metal. The street behind us remained empty, but that meant nothing. The silence felt practiced, rehearsed. Whatever had been monitoring us for months was patient, methodical, careful. And it had already proven it could find us anywhere. Really scary stories, every day. Subscribe, like if you like, turn on the bell so you don't miss new videos.